Welcome to Politics and Tactics. We got a great show for you tonight. As we told you right here on the show, everybody calm down. The Trump administration brought back the cancer registry. It brought back NIOSH. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about chief executive training and leadership. And I'm going to have PJ introduce our two great guests.
Yeah, Frank, thanks. And that's great news regarding all of those programs coming back and kind of ear to the ground a little bit. I think we're going to see some more announcements made within the next 24 to 48 hours of other good news coming back to things that the fire service really needs. So we have more good news to follow in the next couple of days, so pay attention. So tonight we have Zach Matthews and Cora Showalter on with us. I had the pleasure to meet Zach and Cora about a year or so ago. They work for a good friend of ours, somebody that we've had on the show many years ago. We have many acquaintances through FDIC. John Schaefer, the director of fire training for for Indiana, pretty much my equal in Indiana. We've known John a long time, since he was doing like green energy stuff and was talking about things that nobody else in the fire service was talking about. So once John introduced me to Zach and Cora, said you need to have them on their show. It only took us like a year and a half or so to actually pull it off. So we've been waiting a long time. So we're appreciative. And then the pretty cool thing about this conversation tonight, I'll introduce them in a minute. We're going to talk about coaching fire service executives and leadership training. But we're not talking like leadership training at the company officer level. We're not talking about leadership training at the firefighter level. We're talking about coaching fire service executives at the chief officer level. Because what I've seen, what I know Frank has seen, and what Cora and Zach have seen is, we have all these great certification levels, which are absolutely needed in the fire service, and there's great leadership and training in the fire service. But when it really comes down to it, our executives and our chief officers experience things that you can't make up. They experience things personally and professionally that they have a very small network of people to lean on for assistance and for help. And they run into situations that just aren't covered in the books, right? So that's where Zach and Cora come in on that executive leadership and really helping our chief officers or company officers that are looking to aspire to the chief officer, provide them that additional leadership training that's outside of the IFSTA manual, outside of the fire engineering books, outside of the Jones and Bartlett, all the textbooks that we use in the classroom. So Zach is an experienced speaker, international trainer, and executive coach who inspires audiences with fast-paced and entertaining programs. And I'll definitely have to say that Cora probably really brings a lot of the entertainment to his programs, because we've had some really fun conversations. You can see already fun conversations, which focus on leadership, communication, and personal growth. He has over 20 years in public safety. Zach's journey has taken him from a wildlife officer to wildland firefighter to leadership roles such as investigations and training commander. He currently serves the planning and section chief for the Indiana Fire and Public Safety Academy, where he coordinates statewide executive leadership training programs, including the biannual Fire Chiefs Academy. Zach empowers fire chiefs to achieve success professionally and personally. He's led over 100 fire executive leadership courses. And Cora has over 21 years of dedicated fire service and law enforcement, and then she saw the light and joined the fire service. She's a seasoned professional whose career reflects a deep commitment to leadership training and community service. She holds a master's degree in leadership and management, and she currently serves as the logistics and community risk reduction section chief for the Indiana Fire Academy. With her experience in education, she has a great passion for leadership, personal growth, and communication through coaching. This is coupled with a drive to lead, support, and develop a person. And having the pleasure to sit down and meet these two individuals and have some personal conversations, professional conversations, man, I can see that the team, I think if they were separate, they would do great things, but their personalities really work well together. So welcome to the show. And Zach, tell us a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to speak on this important topic. As you said, it's kind of an unknown opportunity for fire executives in the fire service. And I think it's important to tell a little bit about how I came into coaching to kind of understand what it's all about. And again, I've been in public safety now going on almost 28 years. And I had an opportunity to go get a international certification in speaking and training. And in public safety, that's very appealing, right? Training, speaking. And there was this third certification called executive coaching. And in my mind, I thought, I don't want to be a life coach. I don't want to go out and hug a tree or braid somebody's hair and, tell them how to live their life.
Wait, you don't even have hair. You don't even have hair. I don't have hair.
But, went to the course. It was over 1,000 people, 40 some countries. And I got a chance to sit down with executives from Make-A-Wish Foundation, a couple of insurance companies, individual owned a NASCAR team. And one thing I realized, they all had a coach, and they were all there to seek out their coaching certification too. For those individuals, the training and speaking certification were the additional certifications. The coaching certification is why they were there. So I got it. I had to go through the entire course. I had to coach a doctor in front of an evaluator. I passed. I came back. And then Cora had her own journey she'll talk about here in a minute. But we started working together, and the fire service in Indiana started accepting it. We started talking about it in our training sessions, and then it's just taken off. And I think I don't have a total count, but I think I'm up to close to 50 fire chiefs / fire executives that I have coached. And with that comes just a wealth of knowledge that I can share in a confidential way with the clients. So I'm excited to talk about it today and see where this journey takes us.
Interesting. Thanks, Zach. Cora, Zach just set you up, so you're going to share your stories.
Sure. So mine is a little bit different. Mine actually started more from a peer support standpoint in public safety. I was on a peer support team. We all go through our own garbage in public safety, exposed to things. So mine started that way. And then Zach and I started teaching a lot of leadership courses. Even before we came to the fire side, when we were still in law enforcement, we started doing a lot of leadership courses for the fire service. And I started picking up just students, and we were coaching. I finally had one of them say, "Have you ever thought about coaching? Because you're doing it all the time. You should look into it." And he mailed me a book, and I read it. And then I went and got my own coaching certification. And through that, similar to Zach, you end up picking up executive coaches. And I even have a couple of clients that are in healthcare, and just kind of pick them up along the way. But my journey really came more from that peer support standpoint. And then it actually took a student to say, "I think you'd be good at this." And I went and got my certification, and widely accepted in our leadership courses. In the private industry, you're starting to see a lot more of those people get coaches and have them, because it really accelerates their own growth and where they want to go. Public service always tends to be a little bit further behind, but we were actually helping push that forward here in Indiana anyway, as far as getting that to be more mainstream and executives being comfortable in the public sector of having a coach. Because Zach's right, for the most part in public safety, it looks very, we're going to eat granola and we can only have tofu if we have a coach. And it's really more about, no, here's some dedicated time to grow ourselves. I've had a coach, Zach's had a coach, and it's amazing how much that's propelled us to make and do some things we wouldn't have done without that.
So tell me, like, what does that actually mean, right? Now you guys could bounce it back and forth, whoever wants to take it. What do you mean, like, to have a coach? When you say coach, I think of like a basketball coach or football coach, out on the field. That's not something that us in the fire service are used to hearing, right? So for those that aren't understanding what you're talking about, they just have that football coach in mind, right? What is it that actually is, and what do you do?
Sure. So, Zach, you just interrupt me anytime you have a good thought. That tends to be when we do our best. So really it is just saying, I'm going to, as an individual, so I'll talk about me, I'm going to get a coach, and I know that for 1 hour during these sessions, we're going to focus on one thing that I want to focus on. And it's co-collaborating and brainstorming and problem solving with a person with no emotional attachments, or it's a non-biased person, just to listen, to allow me brainstorm and allow me space to think. Most people in public safety are go, go, go. You go to the scene, you solve the problem, you go back, you're going to go to the next call, solve the problem. And we never take time to think, slow things down and really process and look at different ways we can solve problems, and or even have people who aren't swayed or biased towards our own emotions of the things going on. So it's a one-on-one where you're co-collaborating and solving problems. You have anything else, Zach?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people see Cora and I in that leadership training role. We usually do a 6-day leadership series or one-on-one staff retreats for a fire department. And they think of us in that leadership role. And then privately, a fire chief will often reach out and say, I would like to change the leadership culture in my organization or expand communication, improve communication. And the answer that I often give is we can't do that. But we can work on your personal growth and development, and that will change the leadership culture and the communication within your organization. We're often looking for, like you said earlier, the certification course, which is a little bit less personal. So if you want to change the leadership culture, communication in the organization, it's with this personal growth and development. And again, a lot of times the chief will send off the staff, but forget about themselves. And as Cora said, this is 1 hour sessions at a time where we are their paid best friend. We don't coach for their mayor or comp controller or even their staff or even the citizens of their community. For 1 hour, we dedicate our energy to them. It's one-on-one, very personal. It's confidential, and there's an accountability piece too. A lot of times there is an initial frustration. I've got these 10 issues plaguing me as a fire chief. And we'll say, let's pick one. Let's work on one. And when you work on that one problem, the other problems tend to just dissolve or go away. And it's quite honestly something that we don't often feel comfortable talking about in public safety. But there's a mental health piece to this as well. The fire chief feels often isolated. It's difficult to say, hey, I'm not holding some of my people accountable. And about the only best friend they have is the assistant chief. And it's uncomfortable telling that assistant chief, I feel uncomfortable about holding you accountable. So they have really no one to talk to. They can't really go to the mayor and say that as well. So we're their paid confidential best friend, and we give them tools through our training and experiences. And that one-on-one session becomes very personal and intimate. And when that happens, we tend to, again, focus on problem-solving techniques with an action plan at the end of the hour. And then we meet again in about 2 weeks, and we say, hey, how's that going? And the goals that we set are achievable, not lofty goals that take months, years, or outside of even budget cycles. It is doable within a 2-week period. And they feel that progress, and it's motivating, and it just works to the next session and the next session and the next session.
Yeah, that small goal, achieving them, most of the time when you start working with someone, I've got a whirlwind of things going on in my mind. It's over and over and over again, and I don't know how to even focus on what's important. So making them pick one, like Zach said, the other problems kind of go away, but you're also causing some calm to the whirlwind of, I've got all of these things and I don't even know where to begin. So it's usually, we'll pick one, right? We're going to pick one and we're just going to get going in that direction. And that really brings a calm, like, oh, okay, I don't have to tackle all of the things at one time. And right. I'm always surprised too, like which one like Zach said, they start with, I want to be a better leader. Well, that's a really big chunk, right? A really big thing to swallow. So it's more of, well, let's just pick one. If you could, in 2 weeks from now, if you could say this one thing about your leadership was better, what would it be? And sometimes it is like the smallest little thing, which actually includes something at home. Because if this were better at home, it would be better at work. So it's really interesting how those conversations go. And just being able, I've had a lot of clients just appreciate, like Zach said, this is all confidential and it's affecting nobody at work for how I feel. And feelings in public safety aren't always comfortable either. To say I'm uncomfortable or I don't know what I'm doing, because we're so used to going to a scene and doing and having all of the answers and performing. And it's really hard to be in a place where you don't feel that way. And leadership is a big place. Leadership's a team sport. So why wouldn't you need a coach? Every team sport's got a good coach. So it's interesting and extremely rewarding.
Now, is this done through you guys as individuals, or is this done through the training academy in Indiana?
Right. So we do it as individuals. John Schaefer, our director, is very supportive. And we do provide leadership training through the fire academy, but each of us have our own private business, and coaching is not offered through the Indiana Fire Academy. We offer it as private individuals. So no one knows. If it was offered through the state, there might be some concerns about confidentiality, and shared information. So this is just done through our private businesses, and everything remains confidential within our private businesses. And even though Cora and I work together, we're very careful about our information. Sometimes we have a chief and assistant chief sign up, and we'll split them up with their permission. Cora will coach one, I'll coach the other. And that even helps when maybe the assistant chief wants to talk about some things they're struggling with the chief. And then we can share that responsibility amongst the two of us, and that tends to make people more comfortable.
Now, neither of you are a lawyer or a doctor, though, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
We're not licensed clinicians, just certified as executive coaches. So there is a threshold when certain things are brought up that we make referrals to a licensed clinician if something like that comes up.
Just one point I want to make is that if you haven't been sued and you're a fire chief, that just means you haven't been a fire chief long enough. Because the fact is, you're going to get sued.
Yeah.
Whether it's an EOS, whether it's this complaint, that complaint, you're going to get sued. Yeah. So the confidentiality, what documentation do you do, and do you explain to these chiefs that you can get subpoenaed and questioned in a lawsuit if that happens to be an issue that they want to talk about? Say they're dealing with well, let's put it this way. Most chiefs, their biggest problems are usually employment type of problems, whether it's a career or a volunteer issue. So do they understand that you can get subpoenaed?
Yeah, no, I that's explained up front. There's actually a 2-page document that explains the role of the client and the coach. However, we take no notes. We're not we're not a paid consultant. We're just a coach. And that allows for a lot of freedom. Yeah. So we take no notes, and then the chief walks away with all the tasks. That also helps with that confidentiality piece. And again, if something comes up where they need to speak to a clinician, then we can make a referral. And then again, that becomes another animal from there. But we do follow up, because we follow up every 2 weeks. We talk about that issue let's talk about how you're struggling with the lieutenant who has a sexual harassment complaint against them. Did you achieve that difficult conversation that you wanted to have with the assistant chief, and how they did not follow through with what you asked them to follow through? That's from memory. That's from 2 weeks. We remember what we discussed with that client because we're very aware that to keep it confidential, no notes are taken. And really, in the coaching scenario, the coach does 20%, the client does 80%. And so the client is walking away with the things that they need to work on. If a client is not interested in self-improvement, it won't work because they have to walk away with a desire for that self-improvement, that self-development. We can't do it for them.
Yeah, our role in all that, like Zach said, is really just to say, did you get done the things that you said that you wanted to get done? And if not, what was your hurdle? And how do you want to overcome that hurdle so we can get there? So a lot of it is they're coming to those solutions. We're just kind of walking them through the system of getting there. But yeah, everything's explained up front. And we have to do our due diligence and refer people on when it's out of our scope and what we do. So
coaching looks different in a couple different ways. coaching, sometimes listening, sometimes coaching is holding somebody accountable. That's the freedom, is coaching is actually merging in different professions into one, where sometimes you're the best friend. It's as relaxed as you're just the best friend. But sometimes you're actually setting out an action plan with strategic objectives and guiding that chief to the next right decision. So there's a range that's allowed within coaching. But again, the freedom, because we're not clinicians, it gives us the freedom to talk about just about anything, as long as that the client is willing to take that action plan forward.
So, where I could see the benefits, something you kind of mentioned, my department, before I retired from the department and went to the fire academy, I was deputy chief of training division of 1. So I was still in the union, but I was also deputy chief. So having, issues, I wasn't going to complain down. I had a few very close confidants who I came up with in the department that I was able to talk to, confidential. But I also had that circle outside of my department of peers, whether they were of equal rank in time or other ranks, and that was very beneficial. And then I was lucky enough and blessed enough to be, to meet Frank, and for him to introduce me to FDIC in that world. And I became friends with, chief officers across the country that I still talk to on a regular basis as I have questions or I want to vent to someone. I talk to Frank on a regular basis, that, as a peer, as a friend. So I can see where the benefit could be is if, I wasn't lucky enough to be friends with Frank and all the contacts and mentors through FDIC. Now here in Connecticut, the Connecticut Career Fire Chiefs, which is a small group, they meet once a month and they discuss things, during their meeting that I'm part of, as far as operational and administrative things that go on across state for sharing of information, usually bring in a presenter. And then the meeting's kind of over, they throw all of us out. And then they have roundtable discussions of peer-to-peer conversations to do exactly what you're talking about as a group, right? So what additional benefit on what you're doing one-on-one is it for those chiefs that already have those groups and have those networks of friends and professionals, either locally or across the country, to help them?
Yeah, I think a big part there is when it comes down to, it is really hard to look at a peer and say, I don't know, if you're so used to knowing, or really uncomfortable to look at a peer and say, yeah, I just don't get it. I'm uncomfortable. I don't know. What if I'm failing at my job? Like these are all thoughts I have had in my career. Am I living up to it? Am I failing at it? Am I a horrible leader? And it's really hard to look at your peers from around the country that you think have their shit together to say, I think I really suck at this. And maybe I'm not in the right role. So having that private person who's just like, well, tell me more. Okay. So you think you are failing at this. Why? And to help you get to it. Those are very real conversations that I have had to have. Poor Zach's had to listen to most of them. Like, what if I'm just really horrible at this? I think that is the added benefit to going outside of those circles of peers. Because I can tell you my own narrative in my head is every one of these people, they know what they're doing. I'm the one person at the table that doesn't know.
Have you ever suggested that they leave the fire service and go work for like fast food chain or something, or is that usually out of the conversation?
Well, only if go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's the fifth option. That is a tool that we use in coaching. It's called the fifth option. Sometimes you're not on the team. That's just the reality of it. Sometimes you're just not on the team. So a lot of times when they want to bring up an issue, it's the hard issue. The easy issues they're not going to talk to us about. They've already solved those problems. So when they bring up a problem with the team or the mayor or and they're hinting at retirement or I just don't know how to handle this, we'll tell them, give us 3 options. What's 3 courses of action that you can take in this situation? And they'll list off the 3 easy ones, the ones they've already tried. And then we'll say, give us 2 more. And when they list off the 5th one, it's usually the answer. But that's difficult to have. You talked about the group setting with the other fire chiefs. Usually you're talking in sound bites if you have 3, 4, 5 people in the room, even a bunch of fire chiefs. You're talking in sound bites. I get a little bit said, The next chief gets a little bit said. But we don't really get to work on my issue when it's in that group setting. One-on-one with a coach, we're listening very attentively to what they're saying. And when we challenge them on the fifth option, usually that's the answer. And in some cases, the answer is, I'm not on the team. And what does that mean? Where do I need to go? But I don't want to give the impression coaching is all when people think they're failing or there's a drastic problem either. A lot of times, again, it is the weight of the position, as you know, the weight of the fifth bugle, a lot of people say, right? That there is very few people that have that dedicated time to spend with the chief to help him work through that issue. And back to the mental health piece, more than one of the chiefs that I work with actually see a licensed clinician, a therapist, mental health professional, which I commend them for. But even the licensed clinician really doesn't help them with the sexual harassment complaint or the contract negotiation with the union, or they're not working through those issues. So the weight that's on them just remains even when they're seeing a mental health professional. So we help them work through the real workplace issues, start checking off those lists and get some of that weight off of them. And that way they can start working on that self-improvement. Their work-life balance is a big topic we talk about. Holding people accountable is a big topic that we talk about. And like Cora said, it's sometimes difficult to acknowledge. I can hold 4 of my staff accountable, but this 5th one, we kind of came up together through the fire service. And I just don't know how to address that issue. It's, gone on a year now, and now it's maybe time to hold that person accountable. I just don't know how to pull the trigger on that. And so we lift that weight off of them by working through that issue. And again, it tends to be one issue at a time. You tackle that one issue, it's this weight lifts off of them, and they're ready to tackle the next thing and the next thing. It's very rewarding and validating being a coach as you see the clients tackling these issues one at a time. It's very action focused. Applied positive psychology is the root of executive coaching. It's forward thinking. We don't necessarily look backwards. We look forward to how people can achieve things.
I'm interested in Frank's perspective. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. Frank authored the leadership book, Command Presence, which is a very different spin, in my opinion, of leadership, because it's than most of your leadership books out there, especially ones in the fire service. So, Frank, what's your thoughts as far as the leadership piece and how leaders could benefit from this? But also, what do you see as far as the cons?
Well, I could see the value in it. A lot of fire chiefs are apprehensive of talking to other individuals. One of the things I do at FDIC every year, I'll have individuals, fire chiefs, come to a workshop, and yet they don't even introduce themselves to the fire chief right next to them. Every class that happens, it's like, it makes absolutely no sense. You might learn more from the person sitting next to you than you're going to learn from me as the instructor. And one of the values that I always say about FDIC is that you can find somebody that's a colleague or a mentor that you can talk to where the names don't matter, where you're not going to get in trouble because you're not being part of the rumor mill in a sense. You can actually have a real, no pun intended, frank conversation where they don't know who Tom or Susie is. So I think that there is some value in that. I think it's interesting, and it's not a foreign concept in the Fortune 500 companies or on Wall Street. A lot of people have executive coaches just basically as a sounding board. So I could see it having value. I also see, the value in having some of those really good friends in very specific areas that you can bounce things off of. So, I'm not completely against it. I think it does have some merit in certain situations.
So
Zach, that just leaving it out there.
So Zach, some of the items that you mentioned in our first conversation you talked about resilience training, and giving them some stress management and resilience ability. I recently read a book, actually, started, haven't finished it. And it talks about generational leaders and the current generation being less resilient. And kind of the basis is, like when I grew up, when Frank grew up, you get into a disagreement with somebody, you'd be at the park, you'd be at the ball field, you'd get into a fist fight, you get into a shoving match, yell and scream, whatever it was, and you get done, you brush yourself off, and you go back to playing ball or going back to playing on the playground. Where the generation that's coming up today and some of our new leaders today and those leaders that will be next chief officers haven't had that opportunity, right? Because they've grown up in the social media age where it's delete, where it's block, if it's send some DM, that whole social media world, which is very different. And the book's premise is that has generated a less resilient generation because they don't know how to have those courageous conversations because they've never got punched in the face because they had a disagreement with somebody because they just got blocked instead. So are some of the issues that you see with those that you coach and in your leadership training, do you see any correlations to the generations? Because we have so many different generations that are in leadership positions now.
Yeah, I do. And I would add gaming to that as well. It's convenient that if you lose to just reset the game and start over again and not work through that issue, right? And live with the fact that you lost. And now what do? You should work harder, right? And train harder and be better. So yeah, I think that translates over for sure. But I do want to point out, I think it's across the generations, holding employees accountable is an issue. And we also coach for-profit organizations as well. I coach for the owner and CEO of a multi-million-dollar organization that flew his entire group from all over the United States to West Lafayette, Indiana, to meet with me. And his number one issue when we did a private coaching session, I'm not holding my people accountable like I would. He's a multi-million-dollar success business owner. He has the same issue as a chief. So I think that's across generations. We don't quite know how to hold somebody accountable. So again, we're having private conversations about how do we navigate this situation? So again, employee accountability is a big one. Workplace balance is a big one. And again, they can talk to some friends, but in 2 weeks, I'm going to ask, how did that action step work? It's a professional setting through coaching, not just friendships. And hey, buddy, how's things going? I actually ask, you were going to confront Frank. How did that go? Tell me how it worked. What worked and what didn't work? What would you like to see different? It has a little more structure to it than just even, like the, coworker or peer. And then again, I think we do some, as Cora mentioned in the very beginning, some co-discovery, and people are surprised in what they find out. A good example is a client that I was coaching, assistant chief at a fairly large organization. He's given me permission to tell the story, but I won't mention his name.
Just tell us his last name.
Yeah, sure. But he wanted to work on communication. That was the number one thing. Well respected in the fire service, I'd say nationally, and communication. He's known as being an expert, but his conversations are usually coarse. People walk away not feeling good about it, and he wanted to work on his credibility. The number one thing we worked on when we met for the first session was that he hadn't been home on time in 6 years. That's the first thing he wanted to work on. Sometimes you don't want to tell people that. So it took about 3 months. We had a session, which is a phone call, and he said, I was very proud. The chief sent me a message Friday, 3:30. Hey, meet with this vendor. He's thinking, I can meet with a vendor anytime, right? Why? So he's thinking about it. He walks down the hall. He's thinking about how the chief's going to be disappointed, knocks on the door, and the chief says, no big deal. No big deal. The important appointment that this guy had, the assistant chief had, was going home. Because he changed his priorities to go home on time. But what he actually wanted me to do was help coach him on how to be more efficient and work harder and get more tasks done, and somehow he would get home on time. That's a misconception. And I have, again, as a professional coach, I need to hold them accountable and say, there's no tool that I can give you that will make your wife more important other than going home. And he was very proud to tell me that, but what he was more proud about was on the drive home, the commute home that he has about an hour. He realized as an assistant chief with a staff of 20 some people, how many emails and assignments he gave at 3:30 on Friday to his staff, indicating that work was more important than going home on a Friday. So again, we all have work to do, and you're going to miss family events, but it was kind of interesting to hear he really wanted to talk about communication. Where we landed was workplace balance. By getting that straight, after 3 months, we started working on communication at work and seeing leaps and bounds in his personal development and leadership skills because he was able to kind of resolve some things, to include gardening with his wife, which he absolutely despises. But he said, I all saw that as weeds and just distractions. But he said, he pulled into the driveway one day and realized he could name off every plant in the garden that he could see from the driveway. Not so much that he cared about gardening or that his mindset changed about gardening, but he cared about it because his wife cared about it. And you better believe that translates over to your people that you lead as well, recognizing that I need to start understanding and caring more about what they care about and not just my own mission and vision and goals.
I think some of what Zach's saying too, to go back to your at least question about resiliency, PJ, is we all have things, tough things that we work through. Even if you didn't get punched in the face at the playground, or in my case, I got a kickball thrown in my face, right, in kindergarten. It hurt really bad, right? So even if that's it, it's putting those things in perspective, where I think a lot of people have gone through that stuff, but they didn't even take the time to realize the things they could have learned. They may have a victim mindset instead of you're saying, oh, let's look at this a little different. Did you learn something from that? Is that something you can take away and apply to another relationship or yourself at work or how you're going to treat people? Because what we're really a big part in our leadership series is calling each other to treat people like people. So even some of that resiliency piece, and you're right, the way people communicate now is so different than the way we did, where you got to hear someone's displeasure in their tone, even if it was on the old landline, right? You got to hear that. You don't have to hear that in a text message, but it's actually going through, like, how are you treating people and what can you learn from this? Even in that form of resiliency, we maybe have to be creative or reframe it in our own mind of what we're looking at. But especially people in public safety, we all get to go through garbage if you're in public safety, because you all get to go to a call and it's not going to be the best call. And we all have to find ways to work through that. So I've had a couple of clients, and it was battalion chiefs trying to support their people underneath them that went to a bad call, and they won't talk about it. So how do I support them? And it starts with, well, how are you taking care of this call? How are you setting that example? How are you making it safe? And they're like, well, I guess I didn't think about it. I'm fine, which is a great response to things probably aren't fine. So why don't we talk about what fine means? So I think some of that resiliency piece, it might look a little different, but there are ways to capitalize on it. Sometimes it's just engaging in those conversations and extracting from them what they can learn from them.
Going back to what Zach was saying, and I understand that the chief wants to go home, but that could also be a leadership trap too, because if he tells his staff, I'm not giving you work after 3:30 because I want to go home, the firefighter on the back of the truck or the firefighter on the ambulance that gets a call isn't going home at 6 o'clock. Sometimes you need to do your job. So you got to make sure that you don't communicate that to your staff, that your priority is to go home. You're a chief. Your priority should be your staff and your personnel. And yes, sometimes you're going to miss dinner. Sometimes you're going to have to go to that board meeting. That's the job. If you're a fire, that's why we can retire early. Because when you're a fire chief, you're going to be going to the Board of Aldermen meetings. You're going to be going to the city council meeting or whatever it is. There are things that you just can't go home for. I think what it comes down to is, are you staying late for the right reasons? It's got to be based off priorities. A lot of times chiefs are staying late for no reason other than staying late. But there are times where you have to stay late. One of the issues that I see a lot of chief officers have a problem with is building a little bit of fun into every one of their days, which they have the ability to do. I think Cora said it very well in the beginning. Firefighters, they go to a fire, they fix the problem and go on to the next one. Well, as long as you actually get the task done and you have a plan, you should be able to plan out your activities so you're at least doing something that you enjoy as fire chief every single day. PJ?
Yeah, definitely some great points. And, another thing that, I'm looking at some of the information, Zach, that you provided, and it's something I've never thought about. You put fire service leaders are not just operational leaders. That's kind of what we look at chiefs as, operational leaders. They're also influencers, mentors, and community builders. And that's something, I'll be honest, I've never thought about, but you're right. So how does that come to play?
Yeah. So again, when we're coaching, especially a fire chief, it's coaching down and up, or they have leadership opportunities to lead down, lead up to their community leaders as well. You better believe that when we talk to a fire chief, they're going to share information about part of their stress pool, you could say, is going to be dealing with community leaders, even other people in public safety. Cora and I are former law enforcement, so maybe we can have a license to say there's usually seems to be some type of rub there, usually with other public safety partners. And that's difficult when you're trying to build bridges to work through those issues. So again, we have the opportunity, I think, from an unbiased way, especially in our role, because we're around the fire service, we understand it to a degree, but we never pretend that we're structured firefighters or have been. So when we ask questions to the fire chief, they know that we genuinely are curious and trying to discover a solution with them. We're not judging from our past position to say as a fire chief. And again, part of that in that community leading arena, it's important that they recognize a lot of those community leaders, they don't understand the fire service either, right? So that where they may feel some of that friction, it may be just out of a misunderstanding or lack of connection. So when we're doing this co-discovery, where we're basically, there's a phase in the phone call where we start asking discovery questions, they begin to realize, oh, wait, maybe these community leaders are just unaware of our perspective. And there's another better way for us to maybe describe our environment, our situation, our needs that's useful to the community.
Zach, two things, and I'm going to go back to going to work and doing the job. If you're a chief and you're invited, police chiefs are horrible at this, and fire chiefs should know better. If you're a chief and you're invited to a community event to speak, if you go and speak, you just diminish your own command and your own authority. You have to know and tell the wife or your husband that I'm going to go speak as chief to this community event, and I'm going to have to stay there for a half hour to 45 minutes after, because that's where the relationship building comes. Too many chiefs nowadays are worried about their home life balance. They go give the speech, they shake one hand and they leave, and then everybody just talks about them behind their back when they're out of the room. The other point that I think that police chiefs and fire chiefs fail at all the time, and this is one of the reasons why I think coaching, some individuals definitely need coaching one-on-one, is they tend to give their problems to the politicians and the community leaders. So when they meet with the mayor or the first select woman or whoever it is, they always tell them the problem with the police department or the problem with the fire department or what they're having a problem handling. So what I like to tell chiefs is, when you go meet with anybody of influence in your community, always start off by saying something positive about your department, what somebody did. It could be a kid, an officer played basketball with the local kids. It could be about the fire department making a rescue, CPR save. It could be anything. The fire department does so many great things. There's always something good to tell the mayor or the first selectman before you get into your problems. And I think that that could go a long way of also increasing that relationship with the politicians, because they don't even realize they're setting themselves up for failure, because the politician knows every time I see this person, they tell me all their problems. No, tell me you solved something and how great your department is.
So you got two great points there. One is we do work usually on the chief's story, and that's not the department's story, but that's a personal individual story And again, it can be dozens of those. We actually work on how to craft those stories so they can pull them out of their pocket in that after the meetings that they have. And I think that's critical that you're able to tell your story. Your story tells the department story as well. The other thing that you mentioned, Frank, I think is important is we won't talk about time management. Cora and I think that's kind of a negative term. It's priority management. So you're right. Work-life balance doesn't mean 50-50. It's not like the scales are even. Work-life balance, same time at work, same time at home. Sometimes you sacrifice work for home. Sometimes you sacrifice home for work. But it's priority management that we work through with fire executives, not time management. Time management, you're going to fail. You can't create a 25th hour, a 26th hour in the day, but you can set priorities. And I think you said it well earlier. If you're just in a habit of staying just to stay, so you're in the know, you hear the news, you wait till shift change and you're just hanging around. But you could be home for a important priority. You should probably go home. But you're definitely going to sacrifice things at home for work as well, as Cora and I have in our 30-some years in public safety too. I think I missed the first 10 wedding anniversaries, because I was working on a lake, and doing wildlife patrols during the summer. So yeah, it's not equal. Balance doesn't mean equal 50-50. It's about priorities and understanding priorities. And the best way to tackle that, just kind of inside scoop on how we coach fire chiefs on priority management, is duplicating yourself through leadership. So is there an opportunity to expand that sphere of the tasks that need to be done to other leaders? And if there's a way to navigate that, which often there is there a way to help others help you in that executive role? We'll discover that. We'll find a way, and we'll start focusing on priority management, not time management. And again, back to the storytelling, I think it's critical that a chief tells a very personal, relatable story to community leaders, makes so much more impact than just telling facts and figures and run calls and run times. If you can actually tell of the community, the dad that was saved and then walked the daughter down the aisle, a year later, those make such more of an impact on the community than just that, data that you can tell anybody from any profession. Is so much more important to tell the public safety story.
PJ?
Yeah, so Zach and Cora, we always like to try to keep our show at, an hour, which we still have a little bit of time left. A lot of the stuff we've been talking about are like some internal politics stuff, right? And the topic of Frank's show is politics and tactics. So let's talk some personal tactics on if, you were coaching somebody and they needed some tips and tricks, right? So what do you have to offer as far as tips for chiefs to have those courageous conversations, to hold people accountable, and to prioritize? So let's give our listeners some tactics tonight on what they can do better.
So when it comes to, we teach a crucial conversations class. There's a great book called Crucial Conversations, and it walks you through a really easy step process if you have no idea where to begin. But the number one thing I think where we struggle to hold people accountable and have those conversations are we don't do it because it's hard. We don't do it because it's uncomfortable. And the reason why it's hard, it's uncomfortable is because we haven't really asked ourselves what the root of the problem is. What we normally see is a symptom. And so we try to sit down and address a symptom instead of the root of the problem. So way before you can ever do that, you really have to say, this is the root of the problem. And by solving it, I'm actually driving to make my people better. Our goal as leaders should want our people to be successful. So we don't address issues. We don't hold the people accountable because we're uncomfortable. And then the second reason is because we try to address symptoms instead of the root of the problem. And then as leaders, in our own minds, we have to want our people to be successful. So if you can start a conversation with, here's the actual issue I want to talk about, and I want to address it because I want you to be successful, those conversations become easier and easier. I think I've taught Crucial Conversations in our leadership series probably over 50 times. And every time I teach it, the number one reason why leaders aren't addressing issues is because it's uncomfortable. And I don't like to be uncomfortable. For as macho as we are in public safety, we sure don't like to be uncomfortable. So it's going to be uncomfortable. Get your mind right, and then you can work on those other things. So I think just acknowledging why we're not doing it makes it easier to create that very first step to start to have the conversation.
So I have a couple hacks that might be useful in the short time we have left. One of the hacks I use is 10 minutes a day. A lot of times, again, back to priority management and getting focus is taking 10 minutes in the day. At the end of the day, you should actually use your technology and look at your phone, and ultimately use one calendar if at all possible. Merge your work calendar, your personal calendar, your family calendar, whatever you have. But you take 5 minutes to reflect backwards on the day. And when you do, you look at the tasks that you completed. You should celebrate those. But you can get a lot of this done in 5 minutes. You look and see, who did I meet that I maybe should have been more focused on? Or who did I meet where the meeting went really well? What did I do right? What did I learn today? What skill could I maybe walk away with if I reflect on it for just a few minutes? So you take 5 minutes to look backwards. The next 5 minutes, you look forward to the next day. Is there anything I need to move forward to the next day I didn't get done that I should? But then you kind of walk through the same list of questions. Who am I going to meet where I should really stay focused when I'm meeting with them? What opportunity do I have to learn something about myself, about the other person, or maybe my leadership skills? Shockingly, usually when I start coaching chiefs through this, they're excited about it, but in the first 2 weeks, they don't do it. If I ask them, if you were at home and say watching a movie with the family, how long could you go without looking at your phone? And again, in Indiana, a lot of the fire departments we work with, career level, you have somewhere around 100 people, 80 people, 50 people total in the fire department. But the chief will say, I can't go over 5 minutes without looking at my phone. There's no way I would promise to look more than that. So the second life hack beyond the 10 minutes, 5 looking back, 5 looking forward, that keeps you focused, allows you to sleep, allows you to realize that you had some wins, and this is what you need to look forward in the next day. The next hack is try to get up and make an area of your home the fire department. Because if you're checking your phone everywhere throughout your house as a fire chief, you've made your entire house the fire department. So the next hack is try to dedicate someplace. I don't care if it's still in the kitchen at the end of the bar, or your man cave, or you just get up and go to another room, but you take the effort to get up and go over and look at the phone somewhere else. And what that does, it tells your family indirectly that the rest of the house gets to be the home, but that area there, that's where you're going to conduct business. And it also helps you focus, tackle the issue instead of dwelling on it and thinking about it and being distracted. And it, again, raises the priority for work even when you're at home. Momentarily, you tackle it, you deal with it, and then that allows you to refocus on the priority of home. So those are 2 hacks that I often give a fire chief in some of the first couple sessions when I'm working with them.
Cora, what do you got?
Yeah. So Zach and I are very interesting. So his are always going to be very step-based, and I'm much more into being in tune to what are you telling yourself? When you do your 5 minutes behind and your 5 minutes the next day, I would be much more inclined to drive someone to say, the things you didn't get done, why didn't you get it done? What's uncomfortable about it? What's preventing you from doing it? Because if we can start identifying the narratives in our head or the feelings we have why we're not doing something and recognize them, the next time it comes up, we can be more successful in actually doing it. So that's why we work really well together. I think his are, we're going to think. And I'm like, but why? What in your brain is preventing you from doing this? And you need to be aware of it so you can actually tackle it next time. So one hack for me is when you're procrastinating, when you're putting something off, why? What about it is uncomfortable that you're not tackling it? Because if you can be in tune to it, you're going to be more apt to tackle it. And the other hack would be, we always have a narrative spinning in our head all the time. When you meet somebody right now, when PJ and Frank are listening to me talk right now, you each have a narrative right now of, oh my God, I wish he'd be quiet, or this is really good. But be in tuned to that narrative, because it directly impacts how you communicate and affect people that day. And if you're not in tune to it, you may have outcomes that you don't want. So that would be my second piece of advice, is be in tune to the narratives that you tell yourself, because it greatly impacts how your day will go. And I love what Frank said earlier. We have every right every day to have some fun. If you're going to be at work, you might as well have some fun built in there. And that's one way to make sure you're building in some fun.
So I'm going to give a couple housekeeping things, then I'll kick it over to Frank, and then we can go back around the room how Frank normally does it for kind of last thoughts. But I think what you guys are doing is excellent, and I'm going to encourage our listeners, but also the two of you, to consider submitting for FDIC 2026. The submission session is still open. You have until June 16th to submit. I think what you're doing would be some excellent hour, 45-minute classes. With that, with our show is get an article to Frank and I on what we talked about tonight, or what you'd like to talk about and speak about at FDIC, and submit. You have nothing to lose except some of your valuable time to submit, because you might get a no, but you could very well get a yes as well. But you can't get a yes if you don't try. I think what you're offering is very unique, and there's no current classes, at least over the last couple of years at FDIC that I'm familiar with, that are discussing what the two of you are speaking about tonight. So I appreciate what you brought to the table, gave us some tips and tricks and some hacks, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Frank.
Oh, no, I think this was good, and I think it has some value and has some merit, and it's definitely something for fire chiefs and executives to think about. And I was hoping I'd get a little bit more tactics from Zach and Cora here. It just kind of seemed like 30,000 foot view. So maybe in that class or that article, we can delve into a little bit more of the individual things, because if someone's at FDIC, they're already a great person. They've already care enough to be there. Fire chiefs and firefighters who go to FDIC, they're really they're prospecting for that one or two nuggets that they can get out of that program that can make themselves just a little bit better. And a lot of classes that get there that I've seen not do as well as it should is where it stays at that 30,000 foot view. They want, that slide. Hey, I could do that. I could try to do that. I can do that 5 minute before, 5 minute after type of thing. So that's really, in my opinion, what they're looking for. Just to echo what PJ said, make sure that you submit for FDIC. PJ, when's it close?
June 16th.
June 16th. And we'll just go around the horn one more time and give everybody the last word of anything that they want to say. And it was an honor having you guys on the show. Cora?
I just really appreciate the opportunity to come. And I know PJ and Zach worked it out. So thanks for dragging me along. I appreciate being here and had a great time. And so thank you for your time, because time is one of our only real commodities in life. So thanks.
Zach?
Yeah, so thank you again. I think that's a fair criticism too, Frank. And again, the conversation was more at that 30,000 foot view. I think it's a delicate balance, and that's what we're experiencing even in the show right now. There is a confidentiality with it, so we're very cautious about giving real examples unless we have permission. But it is.
That's why I said only use last names. There'll be no issue then.
Yeah.
And first initials.
Yeah. Initials and last name would be great. But no, I think that's a very fair criticism, and I would understand how a listener might even feel like it was just kind of scratching the surface. So I think sometimes you just got to take that risk, take that chance. Usually how it starts.
Just so you know, I say that constructively. I think this is good because it's a new concept of getting the coach, somebody that you can really bounce something off that you're uncomfortable talking about, that you're not going to talk to your friend or a peer about. I'm lucky. I can go to PJ, and PJ will be like, Frank, you're crazy. That's just stupid. And he sets me straight. But a lot of people don't want to hear somebody say, you're crazy, that's stupid, do something else, from somebody they know. So I do think it has value. And I don't think the names matter, but I would like to, maybe we'll have you guys back after we get an article from you where we could talk about just individual tactics for chiefs, maybe based off your experience of what was brought to you. I think our listeners would get a little bit more out of that.
Yeah, very fair. And there's no offense at all in what you're saying. Like I said, I think is a very fair critique of it. It is what we just scratched the surface. So I think sometimes just taking the chance, again, how it usually starts is a 30-minute orientation call where we make sure we're comfortable with each other and we practice. We actually say, give us an issue, let's start on it. And then that's about the only way you can really learn coaching. The same way I was kind of turned off from it. Initially, I thought it was like a life coach. They're going to tell me how to think, like what my priorities are. And it's not like that. You co-create, you co-discover together with a lot of thought-provoking questions. And so it's very individualized. It's hard to describe maybe in generalization. So, we could definitely tell stories with permission that I think would very, very much help the audience understand a practical application, because one of those stories is going to resonate with somebody listening for sure.
PJ?
Great. So just thank everybody. And Zach and Cora, if you haven't, I would encourage you to read, Frank's book, Command Leadership. I'm sure you can provide some of those lessons to chiefs. And again, it was great meeting you guys in Indiana, and appreciate you joining us tonight. So thank you. Don't forget to submit by June 16th, FDIC 2026.
Sure will. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
Politics and tactics tonight. Mark, take us off.